Welcome back to section 2 of healthy relationships. At the moment, with social distancing and this period of lockdown, there can be some difficulties coordinating spaces within the home. Some of us have homes that are large, some of us have spaces that are quite small. Some of us are quite isolated. Some of us it might feel like we've got too many people around us. We're going to look at some figures from a survey where 5,000 people asked questions about family, partners, friends, and work. We saw an increase in non-traditional family arrangements. So, for example, blended families, people that have come together, perhaps had previous relationships, and either one of them may have children, or somebody else coming into a relationship with somebody who's got children and they don't. It's found that there were grandparents who were main carers. 20 to 30% young adults aged 20 to 34 were living with their parents. That can be difficult to kind of navigate changes in terms of relationships as adults living with parents. The most common sources of strain in partnerships were financial worries, work-life balance, and infidelity. Many of us at the moment are either out of work or working remotely from home. There's a lot of people still as essential key workers out on the front line serving the community. There's all sorts of different strains that can put in partnerships at the moment. Here are a few more figures from the survey. Honesty, commitment, and communication were rated as the most important factors in a relationship. Relationships are vital for our survival. This actually highlights some of the links on the healthy relationship wheel in section 1. 77% of people reported good friendships, and about 1 in 5 said they would confide in their friends if they were worried or stressed. It's interesting that over 75% report good friendships, but only 1 in 5 feel able to open up. Did this surprise you? It's great to see that almost 60% of us have good relationships with our bosses, as we spend a significant portion of our life working. It does indicate, however, that 40% don't have that experience. And it was concerning to note that so many people believe that work has to come before family in order to be well regarded by our bosses. At the moment, there are a significant number of people working remotely from home. Some people are waiting to return to work. Many households face increased financial pressures due to unemployment. Recognise what a stressful time it is for people at a time of lockdown, and there could be difficulties in implementing structure and negotiating roles within the home. I'm going to ask you to pause now and watch the video clip in the link below. How did you find watching that video clip? Were you able to make any notes, reflections? I wonder if there was anything that you could relate to. It might be helpful to make some notes on how you think each person contributed to the conversation going wrong. And again, what could they have done differently? If you could just make notes on those 2 questions, we'll just pause. This illustration by Glasberg states, that's why God gave us 2 ears, one to hear what you say and one to hear what you mean. Listening is sometimes a skill that can be perfected. Sometimes we're selective in what we hear, and sometimes we're not actually paying attention to what the person's saying. And that can lead to a sense of a lack of trust, a lack of respect, and create feelings of frustration and anger. Looking at communication, John Gottman is a psychological researcher and clinician who specializes in relationships. He identified 4 areas that he termed the 4 horsemen. These are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. We're going to look at the definitions of these in closer detail. While most relationships will have some of these, healthy relationships don't use them nearly as often and do more to repair them when they are used. Criticism, verbally attacking personality or character. A complaint focuses on a specific behaviour, but criticism attacks a person's character. Trying to use I statements to express what we need to say in a positive way can help with that. For example, instead of, you always talk about yourself, why are you also so selfish? Antidote, I'm feeling left out of your talk tonight and I need to vent. Can we please talk about my day? Looking at contempt, attacking sense of self with intent to insult or abuse. Some of these examples could include sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, and hostile humour. For example, instead of, you forgot to load the dishwasher again, oh, you are so incredibly lazy, rolls eyes. An antidote could be, I understand that you've been busy lately, but could you please remember to load the dishwasher when I work late? I'd appreciate it. Defensiveness, victimizing yourself to ward off a perceived attack and reverse the blame. Many people become defensive when they are being criticized, but it does not help. For example, it's not my fault that we're going to be late, it's your fault, since you always get dressed at the last second. An antidote could be, I don't like being late, but you're right. We don't always have to leave so early. I can be a little more flexible. With stonewalling, withdrawing to avoid conflict and convey disapproval, distance and separation. It can mean complete withdrawal from a conflict discussion and no longer responding. It usually happens when we're feeling flooded or emotionally overwhelmed. So our reaction is to shut down, stop talking and disengage. An example of this could be, look, we've been through this over and over again. I'm tired of reminding you. An antidote could be, honey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need to take a break. Can you give me 20 minutes and then we can talk? It should last at least 20 minutes because it will take that long before your body physiologically calms down. It's quite important at a time like this, increased isolation from some of our support networks, increased pressures within the home, trying to navigate and negotiate space. It can cause some of these communication styles to increase. We need to try to exercise some self-compassion, recognize them, and try and do some self-nurturing activities that might help us to have space to calm down. Sometimes it might be helpful to use the term red card as a timeout, just to give you that space, just so family or friends know that I just need to take a moment. I'm just going to go from, perhaps that's a good time to go for your daily exercise and have some space to let your body calm down and the adrenaline to reduce. So this is the final slide before we move on to section 3. We're going to take a more detailed look at communication, and we're going to consider 2 types of conversation. When we're communicating, we can have 2 types of conversations. One, sharing thoughts and feelings. Within a healthy relationship, we can share our thoughts and feelings honestly with the other person. This includes sharing our feelings about things that are nice and also things that are more difficult. With this conversational style, our primary goal here might be expressing ourselves and letting the other person know how we're feeling, rather than a goal to leave with an outcome or decision. In order to share our thoughts and feelings, and for these feelings to be heard, we need to think about how we communicate these. How we communicate is important. To actually feel like we're being heard by the other person is important. When we consider a different type of conversation, decision making, when we're using these conversation types, we might have an outcome that we're hoping to achieve. We might be hoping to voice our opinions about something and hear the other person's opinions about this, and then come to a decision. Using this conversation type, it might be helpful to have an idea of our needs and the goal we might like to see before going into a conversation. For example, having a plan going into a conversation allows us to remain focused on this, increasing the likelihood of getting to a mutually beneficial decision, something that's going to be satisfying for both people in the conversation. In therapy, we often say follow the plan, not the emotions or mood. Having a plan going into a conversation allows us to keep to this rather than respond to the other person's emotions or our own. On these occasions, these conversations could be quite upsetting. For example, when you've come home feeling stressed, if you're a key worker or an essential worker, because of increased pressures and workload, you might tell a friend, parent, flatmate about this, and they say, well, it's part of your job. Can you improve your time management skills or prioritization skills? When all you really wanted was some space to share your feelings and maybe even sympathy, rather than a conversation about making decisions. Perhaps for some people that are still working, shift patterns at work have been constantly changing and can be quite unpredictable. Also, for those working remotely from home, that can make it difficult to plan other tasks in life. For some people as well, it's also about not having as much structure and things to do because work is paused. You might be on furlough. In this example I spoke about with changing shift patterns, somebody might speak to their manager with the idea to reach a decision about shifts being more consistent. However, their manager could respond by asking them how they're feeling and if they're okay, reflecting that they feel or seem quite tense, and try to engage the person in a conversation about their feelings rather than a decision-making conversation. People don't always agree on which conversation they're having. Can you think of any examples of this in your own relationship?